Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make my gluten-free Blackberry cupcakes with Blackberry Buttercream. Such a fun cupcake to make, delicious to eat, and they look really cute and kind of springy, festive for maybe an Easter dessert. So the first thing I'm going to do is preheat my oven to 350. You don't have to have a stand mixer, but it really makes fast, easy work of it because we really need to whip our butter. And then of course when we go to make our buttercream. So here in my stand mixer bowl, I've got 3/4 of a cup of butter, and it's really soft, room temperature. And before we start whipping our butter, I want to talk to you about my Blackberry sauce and my cupcake liners. I've got 18 cupcake liners. These are really cute green ones. You could use whatever ones you want or none at all. But the interesting thing is, even though these are kind of standard cupcake liners, they're actually a little bit smaller than the cups of my muffin tins. So I may or may not need 1 or 2 more just because they're a little bit smaller. And then let me get my dry ingredients together as well before we get to the Blackberry part. I've got 2½ cups of my gluten-free flour, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And you don't really even have to stir this around, but I'm going to. Whoop. Make sure to keep it in the bowl. So our dry ingredients are ready. So this is my Blackberry, it's kind of a sauce. And I'll show you how I made this while I get my butter whipping. So this little bit goes for our cupcakes, which we won't be using all of it. I was hoping to reduce it down to about 1/2 cup, and I've got a little bit more than that. So we just need 1/2 cup of this. And then I do have my other Blackberry part of this in the fridge, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I'm going to start whipping my butter, medium, and then to high speed. We want this to be really light and fluffy and pale in color. And while I'm doing that, I'll show you how I made my Blackberry sauce. I have a 16-ounce package of frozen blackberries that I've thawed. And then I've got a magic bullet. You could use fresh blackberries, but frozen are usually cheaper. I'm going to fill it up about halfway full and get it nice and pureed. And then I've got a bowl with my strainer, and I can get straining this part of my blackberry puree while I process the other part. Don't throw away this juice either. We want all of it. In fact, I'll just pour it in here. And the main reason I want to puree this is so I can strain out all of the seeds. I love blackberries, but I hate all of the seeds that are in them. And it does take a little bit of time to really strain out all of the solids, but that's okay. And it works out really good that we're using our strainer because I've got 1 lemon here that I'm going to juice and just pour in through the strainer as well. We don't want to go through all of the effort of straining our blackberry seeds just to wind up with a lemon seed. And make sure to get all of your blackberry puree. We need 2 cups total of our puree, so you really don't want to waste any of it left over here in this blending container. I like to rinse off my spatula. Just in case there's any seeds on my spatula, I can really scrape the bottom of my strainer without getting extra seeds in there that I've been working so hard to strain out. Sometimes it's good to scrape the bottom just so you can force more through the strainer. And I think that is about all that we're going to get squished out of our blackberry pulp here. So we need 2 cups total, but we need to separate 1 cup for what will go into our cupcakes and the other cup that will go into our frosting or buttercream. And it looks like this one is just over 1 cup and this one is just under. So I'm just going to make them even. There we go. 2 cups exactly. So I've got a saucepan here. I'm going to turn it on about medium. In goes 1 cup of our blackberry puree. And then I've got, it's about 2 tablespoons of honey. And we want to stir this constantly over medium heat until it's reduced and really thick. You don't want the heat too high or else it will burn. And I'm looking to reduce this by about half. So we started out with 1 cup, we want to end up with about 1/2 cup. And once you're happy with that, turn off the heat. I've got about 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then I've got a little bowl here I'm going to pour it into. Once this is cooled off, I'll wrap it in plastic wrap and put it in the fridge. Now in the same saucepan, we're going to dump our other 1 cup of blackberry puree. No need to wash the saucepan, it's almost the same ingredients. So turn the burner back on medium heat again. Got 2/3 cup of honey. And this is the base for our Ermine frosting, or Ermine Buttercream. When I made this for the red velvet cupcakes, I used milk. But you can use fruit juice or fruit puree. And then I've got a 1/4 cup of white rice flour and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And we want to cook this over medium heat, stirring constantly until it's really thick like a pudding. You don't want any lumps of flour in there. You could use a whisk, but I like to use my spatula. That way I can mash out any lumps of flour, and I can scrape the bottom of the pan at the same time just to make sure it isn't sticking. And this is looking really good. I'm going to turn the heat off. And I've got another bowl here. We can pour this in. I'm not sure if you can see how thick this is. Here's the base for the Ermine Buttercream. And then here is my blackberry puree that we've reduced. Cover this with plastic wrap while it's still warm, directly on the surface so it doesn't develop a skin. And if your butter is at room temperature, this is exactly how it should cream together. I am going to scrape the bowl down just to make sure that it is all getting whipped around in here. And then whip again on high speed. I'm going to scrape everything down again, and then we'll add in our honey. I've got 1/2 cup of honey. So now whip your butter and your honey together. Scrape everything down again just to make sure everything is getting all mixed together. Sometimes it is easy to take the bowl off of the stand and really get in here and give it a good scrape. So I've got 3 eggs here. Everything is at room temperature. We'll add them in one at a time, mixing really well after each egg. And then I should tell you the rest of my ingredients. I've got 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and then I've got 1 cup of plain whole fat kefir. This would actually be buttermilk, but I really like the kefir in this recipe. So that's ready to go, also at room temperature. And then my oven is ready. And then even though I made my blackberry sauce yesterday, I did have it in the fridge overnight. So I've had it sitting out, and we just need 1/2 cup. So while I'm thinking about that, I'm just going to use the same measuring cup that my honey was in and measure out the 1/2 cup that I need. And don't worry that we might have some left over. This is perfect on waffles or pancakes, French toast. It's just a really thick blackberry sauce. Not a lot of honey is in this part, but it sure is delicious. It's got a really nice bright flavor. And you know, I might not have any left over. That's what happens when you think you're really good at eyeballing measurements, but look at that. It actually is the 1/2 cup that I was hoping for. There you go. So now we'll just go 1 egg at a time. On low speed, here goes my first egg. Turn the speed up to medium. Here goes egg number 2. I want to scrape down my paddle and my bowl. Some of this honey butter is kind of stuck on the paddle and stuck around the sides of the bowl. So I really want to make sure my eggs are getting mixed in well. Here goes my last egg and my 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And it's okay if this mixture looks chunky and separated. It will all come together when we start adding in the dry ingredients. So on low speed, I'm going to start spooning in about 1/3 of my dry ingredients. We're going to alternate between our dry ingredients and our kefir. So I'll probably go 3 additions of my dry ingredients and 2 additions of the kefir, or buttermilk, whatever you're using. Back down to low speed, I'm going to pour in about 1/2 of my kefir. Give the bowl a scrape here. Another 1/3 of our dry ingredients. And the rest of our keeper. And now the last of our dry ingredients. Really nothing to it at all. And right now, it's pretty much just, vanilla cake batter. And then I like to give it one more good scrape. Make sure everything really is getting mixed in. So now for the blackberry part. So what I like to do, I'm going to scrape off this spoon into my mixture here. Now you could have stirred in or mixed in your blackberry sauce and turned your cake batter here into a pretty pink cake batter. But what I like to do, scrape everything down first, but I like to drizzle in just a little bit of the blackberry sauce and very gently fold it together. I'm hoping for kind of a marbled effect with my blackberry sauce and my cake batter. But if it all gets mixed in, it's okay. Here goes the last of my blackberry sauce. And it's getting mixed in more than I intended. But you know what? It will be delicious and a really pretty pink color. There we go. So now, bring over your cupcake tin. And then I've got 2 spoons here. And we're just going to spoon in our cupcake batter into our cupcake liners. Very carefully. I'm not sure if you can see or not how much smaller these liners are than the tin itself. Going about 3/4 of the way full. I think I'm just going to top off the rest of my cupcakes just to make sure they're all even in here, and then I won't have to add any more liners. It will just be the 18 that this recipe makes to begin with. And they mostly seem to be about the same size. Do your best. So now these will go in the oven. I'll start checking them at about 18 minutes, but they might go for about 25 minutes. We'll see. And while those are in the oven, I'm going to clean up, wash my stand mixer bowl and the paddle, and then we can get started on the buttercream. So my cupcakes went for about the full 25 minutes. Just want to check them and make sure they're not doughy in the middle. But they sure look good and smell good. And I actually did a really good job of kind of marbling my blackberry sauce with the cake batter. So a toothpick is coming out clean and they feel springy to the touch. So my cupcakes are out of the pans and they're cooling off. They're not ready to be frosted yet, but we can start making our buttercream. And here is my blackberry white rice flour Ermine Buttercream beginnings. You don't have to make this the day ahead like I did, but I really wanted this to be able to set up nice and firm in the fridge overnight. And it is really solid, which is what I wanted it to be. If I start stirring it around, it's like a really thick jam. I was so excited when I saw a recipe in one of my really old cookbooks. If I remember right, I think it's my Fanny Farmer cookbook that has a recipe for buttercream, and it isn't called an Ermine Buttercream. It's just called just a frosting or a buttercream. Although it's the same ingredients as the Ermine Buttercream, and it says use milk or fruit juice, which I think is really interesting that they're kind of interchangeable. So what another way to make a buttercream that maybe if you can't have milk, or maybe you've tried other milks and it doesn't really work out very well, this looks like it will be delicious. So you get to experience it the same time as me, because I have not made a fruit juice or fruit puree Ermine Buttercream before. But think of the possibilities. So that's ready to go. I've got 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I do have my piping bag ready to go. And then I've got 1 cup of butter. And it is, again, really soft, room temperature. I had it sitting on my stove top there. So now we want to whip our butter on high speed for a good solid 5 minutes, and I'll scrape the bowl down maybe once. Oh, we're about 2.5 minutes in. Now we'll go for another, 2.5 minutes or so. So once again, scrape everything down. Now on low speed, I'm going to start spooning in my blackberry puree flour mixture. One of the reasons why I wanted to try this particular buttercream recipe is, first of all, I think it's going to be delicious. But second of all, sometimes when you're using fresh fruit or frozen fruit that's thawed in a buttercream, it has a tendency to break the buttercream unless you use a lot of powdered sugar. And of course, if you've been watching my channel for very long, you know that I don't like to use powdered sugar. So I'm hoping that the white rice flour in this buttercream will help stabilize the fruit mixture, and I also think that cooking the fruit mixture is going to help stabilize it as well. Another reason why I wanted to make my buttercream now is if for some reason it needs some chill time in the fridge, I can do that while I'm still waiting for my cupcakes to cool off. I want to scrape off my spoon here, get the last of my blackberry mixture. And because it is really thick, it's kind of hard to get it in the butter. So I was kind of dropping it down the side of the bowl. But since I'm scraping everything, let's give everything a good scrape here. And then we can turn the mixer up a little bit higher. I'm going to add in my 1 teaspoon of vanilla as well. Look at this color. It's absolutely amazing. So far, I'm super happy with the consistency of this. Now, I do really want to give this a good scrape just to make sure all of that butter really is getting mixed in. And it's a good thing we scrape because down here at the very bottom, there is some butter that isn't mixed in yet. But wow, look at that. It really is such a nice consistency. And I love the color. Back on the mixer. Now, if for some reason your buttercream does start to break and you use powdered sugar, you could add a little bit of powdered sugar to help stabilize your buttercream. I don't plan on doing that, but keep in mind if you do, it will probably make your buttercream a little bit paler in color as well. And I think I'm going to call that good. Let me get everything scraped off one more time here. And you know, I think I might have found my new favorite buttercream. And all I can think about is, what if I did this with blueberries? What kind of a color would that be? And I'm so happy with the consistency of this. You know, with my Ermine Buttercream when I was making my red velvet cupcakes, if you saw that video, you'll know that my buttercream was really soft. And that might be due to the fact that I had made my flour mixture that day. So the key to that particular buttercream might be doing what I did with this one, is making the flour mixture part the day before, and then it really has time to sit in the fridge and firm up. But such a great texture and such a great color. I'm going to give it a taste here. I tasted the blackberry part yesterday and it's delicious. That is delicious. And you know, that little bit of lemon juice that we put in there, it really just brightens up the whole thing. Yeah, I think this is one of my new favorite buttercreams. Okay, so that is ready. My cupcakes are too warm to frost, but we can still get our buttercream in our piping bag. And you know, for one frozen package of blackberries, it's a really inexpensive way to have a really nice fruit cupcake. Especially with grocery prices nowadays. Try to save money wherever you can. Now, another thing I had thought about as well, which I didn't end up doing, but I had thought about it, is if for some reason this buttercream didn't hold the shape that I was hoping it would, I could have added some cream cheese just to make it a little bit more stable. But it's doing a really good job. And I think a cream cheese blackberry buttercream would also be delicious. So there's that. Let's fold this up here. Push it down. Let me get my bowl scraper. A bowl scraper really is helpful of squishing your buttercream down to the end of your piping bag. I've got my plate here that my butter was on. Let's see how well it's going to hold its shape. Look at that. It's holding its shape really well. Okay, our cupcakes are completely cool to the touch. So now we can start decorating them. And I really like the tip that I'm using today. It makes it look kind of like roses on top. You know, I'm going to actually line them up so I can kind of assembly line, get them all frosted here with my buttercream. You know, I've got some cupcakes that are a really nice size. This one's a really tiny one. You know, that's the one I'll eat. So now we just get to decorating. And of course, I tell you, it looks like a rose, and that one doesn't really look like a rose. There we go, that one looks better. And you know, this buttercream really is piping so well. Such a pretty color too. And of course, it depends on how much buttercream you put on top of your cupcakes. But I've used most of it. So there we go. Not a whole lot left over. But they sure look beautiful. And you know, even though my little green liners are kind of smaller, they sure look pretty. I think they look like a really nice spring cupcake. Almost kind of like a tulip with a green stem and the pink flower on top. But so pretty. And wouldn't this be a fun little treat if you're having an Easter egg hunt, Easter dinner? Let's check out what our cupcake looks like. And these cupcake liners, they are a little bit stiffer. A little sturdier than just a paper liner. Be very careful here. There we go. Let me get a knife. Straight down the middle. And look at that. Of course, it's a darker color than the buttercream, but I don't mind. And I already know that my cupcake is delicious, but you know, let's just give it a bite and confirm for you. So good. Let me taste a little bit of my cupcake by itself. That blackberry flavor is coming through so well in my cupcake and my buttercream. And my cake itself, it's not dry at all. It's really moist and delicious. I'm making a mess all over the place. You gotta make these cupcakes. They are absolutely delicious. If you like blackberries, these are the cupcakes for you. And this buttercream is absolutely delicious. And look at the amazing color that we've achieved with just the fruit. And you might ask yourself why you would go to all of the trouble to process your blackberries, make them into a puree, cook it twice, once for the filling and then once for the buttercream. But this is why. Because they are absolutely delicious. And these aren't cupcakes that you'd make on a regular basis. They're a special occasion cupcake. Let me know what you think if you make this recipe. I really hope that you do. They really are so delicious. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. and I'll see you on the next one.